In this lecture, I'm going to discuss about the problem of data trimming. The data trimming is the operation of trimming the data or cutting the data for our purpose. Sometimes we need to cut the data so that though the outliers that are present in the data or the extreme values that are causing uh, problems in the analysis of the data set can be cut off. A cutting operation is a very common operation. I mean, we do it normally when we are video editing, when we are picture editing, when we are voice editing. We usually cut off the things which are not required. So this is the basis of those editings, the data trimming. For this purpose, I have chosen an example, and we will see that how the data trimming is performed on this example. So we have a data set which comprises of the values as you can see over here 1.1, 1.2, and so on to 1.5. And then we have to basically find the range of this data set X, and we have to find new ranges at 5% and 10% trimmed values from both ends respectively. Now what does it mean? It means that first we have to find the range of the data set as it is. Next, the part B, we have to trim the data 5% from both the ends. That means we have to cut off the 5% from the left hand side, and we have to cut off the 5% from the right hand side. And then whatever would be the remaining that is in between would be the new data set, and the range of it would be the new range. And likewise, for 10% trimming, we have to do the similar operation. We have to cut off 10% from the right hand side and 10% from the left hand side. And the remaining that would be in between the two would be the required range for the new data set. That is what we have to find out. So for any ranges to calculate, we must first arrange the data set in an ascending order. This is the first step to calculate the range. The data set should be in ascending order, and by ascending order we mean that the lowest value should be the first and the highest should be at the end of the data set. So I have arranged the data set in the ascending order first. This is the important step. Please consider it. If you won't consider it, then your ranges, your percentiles, deciles, whatever you find out, quartiles would be incorrect. So once the data is in the ascending order, we use the formula for range. You can check in the lectures of ranges and quartiles and percentiles, deciles, that how we find these differences. So range is the difference between the maximum value of the data set and the minimum value of the data set. The difference between the two, the subtraction between the two is the range. So the max value is 6.1 and the min or the minimum value is 1.1. Max means maximum. Okay, so 6.1 minus 1.1 gives 5.0. So this is the required range, and this is the answer for part A. Now for part B, we have to find the 5% trimmed points, and the new range would be in between the two. So for this purpose, we use percentiles. The fifth percentile and the 95th percentile is required because after 95th percentile, 5% is remaining, and before fifth percentile, 5% is. Uh, before fifth percentile, we have the 5% of the initial data set. So we find P5 and P95. The trick is this: we find P5 and P95 and get the difference between the two. Now, the way to calculate the percentiles, we already know. The first step, data ascending order, it is already done. Second step, the location of the percentile. We have the formula for it, which is I upon 100 into n plus 1. N is the total data set size, which is 12 over here. I is 5 because you want to find the P5, and 100 is the dividing factor for the percentiles. And when we do this calculation, we get 0.65. It is the location point, so 0.665 would be, it is read like 0.65 location. And we can see that we do not have any 0.65 location in the data set. So the first value that we have, we will take it as it is. And this would be taken as the P5 value, which is 1.1. Likewise, when we find the location of P95, we get a value which is 12.35, which is read as 12.35th location. But the interesting thing is this, that we have total data set size equals to 12. So definitely we do not have anything 12.35 location. So what we do, the last value that we have is taken as this value, which is 6.1. So the new range would be the same as it was the previous one, that is 6.1 minus 1.1, which is 5.0. So no change in the previous range. Now for the 10%, the trick is we find the P10 and P90, because before P10 we have 10% data, and after P90 we have 10% data. So if we cut off at P10 and P90, we would be remaining with the data set that has been trimmed from 10% from both the ends, right? So it's like a scissors cutting both the ends at 10% locations. So we find P10 and P90, and P10 value, the location is 1.3 location, and at 1.3 we have the value which is 1.13. As you can see, the calculations are similar from the previous one, just like the previous one. And P90 location is 11.7, which is well within the data set, and the value at P90 is 5.23. The difference between the two, which is 4.1, is the new range which is required. So that's how we calculate the trimmed ranges. Or you can also put it in this way, that's how we basically trim the data set. Note this thing, that P90 is the same thing as D9, that is percentile 90 is the same thing as decile 9, and P10 is the same thing as D1. Percentile 10 is the same thing as decile 1. So P90 minus P10 is the same thing as D9 minus D1. You can check it at your end for your practice problem. You should also note this thing, that it is not always necessary that we trim the data set equally at both ends. It's up to us. We can trim the data set unequally. It's all upon us. The whole purpose of this example was to see that how we use these percentiles or deciles values to basically trim the data set. If you can recall, we did the similar thing in the interquartile range, the IQR. We trimmed the data set over there at 25% locations. Q1 was at 25% location, and Q3 was at 75% location. So that means by 25% location, I meant that before Q1 we had 25% of the data, and after Q3 I had the remaining 25% of the data. So finding an IQR is the same thing as trimming the data at 25% from both the ends. I hope this clears the trimming process, and just another example of the usage of the percentiles or deciles or the quartiles. So thank you very much. Take care.